started, I understand that the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote council session. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council is currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make this remote meeting possible. Instructions for how the public may view the meeting and offer public comment are included in the stated meeting notice that was published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the meeting, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. The clerk will please call the roll to take attendance. Members that are in attendance will please indicate aye, present, or whatever you so may choose to ensure that your image is displayed on the screen. Mr. Decker, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass.
Good morning. I am present. Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues in Philadelphia.
Good morning, Councilwoman.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Brooks.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues in Philadelphia. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilman Dom.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues, and the City of Philadelphia.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Gauthier.
Good morning, Council President and colleagues in Philadelphia. Present.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to the city of Philly Love.
Good morning.
Councilman Green.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Council staff. Good morning to the city of brotherly love and sisterly effectiveness.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Kim.
Good morning, Council President, and good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilman Heenan. Councilman Johnson.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Prayers go out to all the families who lost loved ones to gun violence.
Morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Councilman Jones.
Good morning, Mr. President, colleagues. Eid Mubarak to those completing the Ramadan holy month.
Good morning.
Councilman O.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilman O'Neill. Councilwoman Parker.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, Council President and colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilman Squilla.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues, present.
Good morning.
Councilman Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Council President Clark.
And good morning to all. We have established a quorum. Today, we do not have a pastor for our invocation, so I would just ask our colleagues to bow their head for a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next order of business is the approval of the journal of the meeting of Thursday, May 6, 2021, and the chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the journal of the meeting of Thursday, May 6, 2021 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that the journal of the meeting of Thursday, May 6, 2021 stand approved. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, and the journal is approved. And our next order of business is request for leave of absence, and the chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the members of council, there are no requests for leaves of absence today.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And our next order of business is communications. Mr. Decker, please read the messages from the mayor and any other communications that you may have in your possession.
To the President and members of the Council of the City of Philadelphia, I am pleased to advise you that on May 11, 2021, I signed all the bills which were passed by Council at its session on April 29, 2021, except Bill number 210207, which I am returning without my signature. And I am transmitting for the consideration of your honorable body a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots and pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon, situated in the 3rd Councilmanic District of the City of Philadelphia, and further authorizing the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to transfer to the Philadelphia Land Bank fee simple title to such properties, and a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots and pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon, situated in the 7th Councilmanic District of the City of Philadelphia, and further authorizing the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to transfer to the Philadelphia Land Bank fee simple title to such properties, and a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots and pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon, situated in the 2nd Councilmanic District of the City of Philadelphia, and further authorizing the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to transfer to the Philadelphia Land Bank fee simple title to such properties, and a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots and pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon, situated in the 8th Councilmanic District of the City of Philadelphia, and further authorizing the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to transfer to the Philadelphia Land Bank fee simple title to such properties, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Decker. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be excused from the rest of today's council in order to participate in the Eid celebrations and thank this body for allowing tens of thousands of students in public school to be excused legally to celebrate as well. I want to be reported aye on all bills and resolutions.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you. Thank you so much. Leave shall be granted. Let the record reflect of the Councilman Jones, and he's been reported as voting aye on all bills and resolutions and amendments. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is the introduction of bills and resolutions. By way of a reminder, we are asking that all resolutions, including privileged resolutions, be placed on the final passes calendar for the next session of council, unless they are being referred to committee. In our current remote environment, this procedure will provide an appropriate opportunity for public comment. Thank you very much for your anticipated cooperation. Mr. Decker, please read the titles of the legislation that is being offered today by the members.
Councilwoman Parker offers 2 bills on behalf of Council President. Councilwoman Parker offers an ordinance authorizing the Water Commissioner on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement between the City of Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority for the PRA to act as the city's agent to include and incorporate Philadelphia Water Department identified green stormwater infrastructure projects, the stormwater infrastructure, in certain construction and improvement projects in and around the city on properties owned by the city projects, including those projects arising out of the city's Rebuilding Community Infrastructure or Rebuild program, and on properties owned by the PRA, the city projects and PRA projects together, the construction projects, from the design phase to construction completion in an efficient manner.
Further to me.
On her own behalf, Councilwoman Parker offers an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1200 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Parking Tax by revising certain tax rates. Mr. President, Councilwoman Parker would like to be recognized on this bill.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today I am introducing a bill that is co-sponsored by Council members Jones, Squilla, Heenan, O'Neill, Green, and O, that will lower the parking tax rate to 17% with the start of the new fiscal year, July 1st, 2021. This bill, Mr. President, is a follow-up to Bill number 200288, signed by the mayor last June as part of the 2020 budget negotiations. Bill number 200288 raised the parking tax rate from 22.5% to 25% for 1 year, from July 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2021. Bill number 200288 also stated, Mr. President, that it is council's intent to establish a Good Parking Jobs for Philadelphia Review Committee as an agency of council comprised of mayoral appointees, 2 of whom shall be members of council. In the event that such committee determines the satisfaction of council that the conditions in the parking industry favorably support the development of stable jobs while providing a path to advancement for workers in the industry, it is council's intent, beginning with respect to fiscal year 2022, to reduce the rate of the parking tax with the goal of reducing the rate to 17%. Subsequently, Mr. President, Bill number 200387 created the Good Parking Jobs for Philadelphia Review Committee, and the mayor appointed the members in early 2021. The members of the committee, we've been meeting informally and communicating throughout 2020 and 2021, and we will be having a meeting on June 7th, 2021. As Philadelphia continues to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, I view this bill that we are introducing today as a tool in the toolbox that will incentivize visitors to come back to Philadelphia and help ensure our economic competitiveness in the region. As I have repeatedly stated during the budget hearings this spring, when we are considering lowering tax rates, we need to think very carefully through why we are lowering these tax rates and who may be the beneficiaries of lower tax rates. It is my hope that by lowering the parking tax rate, we can further incentivize those who want to return to our great city, including people who want to enjoy our arts and culture, restaurants, hotels, convention center, and overall hospitality and tourism industries that are in essence second to none. Most importantly, though, the goal of lowering this tax rate is for some of the benefits, Mr. President, to flow directly to the parking workers, either by bringing back laid off parking workers or by improving the pay and the benefits of parking workers. It is with this in mind that I am happy to have partnered not just with the parking industry on this legislation, but also with SEIU 32BJ, who represents many of the parking lot and garage workers. Philadelphia has long had a higher parking tax rate than our peer cities, including New York City, where the rate is just over 18% for non-residents and just over 10% for residents. The plan for our city was to begin lowering the parking tax rate in 2020 and beyond, but COVID, the pandemic precluded us from doing that. And after a year of raising the parking tax rate to 25%, now is the time to rethink whether our high tax rate is a barrier to incentivizing people to return to our great city, and to rethink whether such a high tax rate is actually hurting the parking workers we want to help. I believe that it is possible to be a pro-industry, pro-business, and pro-worker. And as the bill states, its passage will await the outcome of a determination by the Good Parking Jobs for Philadelphia Review Committee that the conditions in the parking industry favorably support the development of stable jobs and provide a path to advancement for workers in the industry. So let me be clear. I will not move for the adoption of this bill unless and until the Good Parking Jobs for Philadelphia Review Committee determines that a lowering of the parking tax rate will, in fact, benefit workers. So I look forward to this bill being considered along with our other budget bills. And ultimately, I look forward to seeing where fiscal year 2022, where our budget ends up, and how it ultimately ends up benefiting the residents and workers of Philadelphia. I also want to note for the record that we always want to make sure that any public policy we are introducing is data-driven and research-based. I was very pleased to get a memo from a third-party independent verifying entity, ESI, eConsult Solutions. And I want to note that it states this: the city administration and city council are actively looking for ways, large and small, to promote the favorable positioning of the city. there's no one policy or program that will solve the problem, but many smart moves can significantly position the city for a greater recovery. And one relatively small but economically significant step the city could take to achieve this overall economic recovery objective is to further reduce the parking tax rate. So I look forward to having a very robust discussion about this issue with my colleagues here in council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you for that clarification. That bill will be referred to committee.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson offers one bill entitled an ordinance amending Chapter 9 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Regulation of Businesses, Trades, and Professions by adding a new chapter related to hiring entities providing covered individuals with workforce and career pathways information sheet.
For the committee.
Councilman Heenan offers one bill entitled an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the city to acquire fee simple title or a lesser interest in real estate by purchase, dedication, donation, condemnation, agreement in lieu of condemnation, or otherwise, in parcels of land connecting to Coney Street to the Frankfurt Arsenal boat launch for public recreational purposes.
For the committee.
Councilman Johnson offers three bills and two resolutions. Entitled an ordinance establishing a no truck parking regulation on both sides of Chester Avenue from 66th Street to 67th Street. And an ordinance establishing parking regulations on both sides of Webster Street between 20th Street and 21st Street. And an ordinance amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising a table within Section 14701 dimensional standards.
Those three bills shall be referred to committee.
And a resolution also naming the 1600 block of South Street, Ronald K. Washington Way.
That will be on next week's calendar.
And a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots and pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon situated in the 2nd Councilmanic District.
Next week's calendar.
Councilwoman Sanchez offers on behalf of Councilman Jones two bills. Entitled an ordinance amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising and consolidating provisions of Chapter 14500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by amending Section 14524 entitled FDO 4th District Overlay District and Section 14527 entitled WYN Winfield District Overlay District. And an ordinance amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning to revise certain provisions of Chapter 14600 entitled Use Regulations by amending use standards for historically designated properties and making related changes.
Thank you. For the committee, and let the record reflect Councilman Heenan is here.
Council President, thank you. I had to step away for council business, and I would like to be recorded as present in today's session, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The record shall reflect Councilman Heenan is present.
Councilwoman Gautier offers two resolutions entitled a resolution authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority deeds conveying fee simple title to certain city-owned lots or pieces of ground with the buildings and improvements thereon situated in the 3rd Councilmanic District.
Next week's calendar.
And a resolution authorizing the Philadelphia Land Bank to dispose of 5559 Locust Street located in the 3rd Councilmanic District.
Also next week's calendar.
Councilman Thomas offers a resolution entitled a resolution honoring and congratulating Destiny Jackson on her acceptance into 50-plus colleges while experiencing homelessness, foster care, and participating in several extracurricular leadership positions.
Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to take a moment to offer congratulations to our champion of the week, Miss Destiny. I was actually introduced to Destiny about 2.5 years ago, actually. And she signed up to volunteer on my campaign when I was running for city council. And I can tell you that it was one of the best experiences that I've had interacting with a young person, especially a young person who didn't come from my traditional means of mentoring, whether it be in the classrooms that I've run or programs that I've been a part of or coaching experiences. It was a different type of connection that I made with Destiny. And I can tell you just from the time I met her to watching her interact with people all across the city, to actually hiring her to work on my campaign. Her personality is one that's just contagious with joy. And, it's an honor to know her. If you haven't seen her on TV or seen her in the paper, she's getting a lot of love across the city right now in the midst of all the negative stories that we see and encounter and have to deal with on a consistent basis. She is a bright and shining star coming out of our city. So I look forward to recognizing Destiny, not just this week, but hopefully we can have her join us in council next week to be able to talk about what she's doing, where she's going, and the bright star that we're hoping she will be representing the city of Philadelphia. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Great story.
Councilman O'Neill offers one bill entitled an ordinance amending Chapter 10700 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Refuse and Littering by amending Section 10719 entitled Penalties by revising the penalty to be assessed for violations of this chapter.
And that bill will be referred to committee, and for the record, Councilman Thomas's resolution will be on next week's calendar.
Councilman Squilla offers one bill and two resolutions entitled an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the City of Philadelphia to enter into an amendment to a lease agreement with Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority for use by the city of a portion of the premises located at 1234 Market Street.
For the committee.
And a resolution authorizing the Committee on Education to hold hearings on the benefits of the Pennsylvania System School Assessment Testing and the administration of these tests by the Philadelphia School District.
This week's calendar.
And a resolution honoring and congratulating Frank Stephan Spira on the occasion of his retirement from the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Liquor Control Enforcement.
And that would be next week's calendar.
Councilwoman Bass offers one resolution entitled a resolution authorizing the Committee on Public Health and Human Services to hold hearings regarding mobile crisis units.
This week's calendar.
Councilman O offers one resolution calling on the City of Philadelphia to include the flag of the Republic of Azerbaijan in the display of international flags along the Benjamin Franklin Parkway.
Next week's calendar.
There are no other bills or resolutions being offered by the members today, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Decker. That concludes our introduction of bills and resolutions. And our next order of business is reports from committee. And the chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass for a report from the Committee on Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Councilwoman Bass, you here?
Good morning, Mr. President. I do apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties.
No problem.
One moment.
Thank
you, Mr. President. The Committee on Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs reports out one bill with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Decker, read that report.
To the President and members of the Council of the City of Philadelphia, the Committee on Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, to which was referred Bill Number 210360, entitled An Ordinance Officially Naming and Designating the Dog Park located on the north side of Winter Street between 21st Street and 22nd Street in the City of Philadelphia as the Rob Stewart Memorial Dog Park. Respectfully reports it is considered the same and returns the attached bill to Council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Chair again recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading this day of Bill Number 210360.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading this day of Bills Number 210360. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. And this bill will be placed on our first reading calendar today. That concludes our reports on committee, and our next order of business is the consideration of the calendar. I note that the bill just read, reported from committee with suspension of the rules, have been deemed to have had its first reading, and that bill will be on our second reading and final passage calendar at our next session of council. As there are no additional bills on the first reading calendar, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker for the purpose of calling up bills and resolutions on the final passage calendar today.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following resolutions and bills are being called up from the second reading and final passage calendars today. They are numbers 210426, 210427, 210428, 210429, 210430, 210432, 210433, 210434, 210203, 210286, 210287, 210288, 210289, 210290, 210291, and 210292. All other resolutions and bills are being held, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Before we proceed, we'll have our public comment session. So we will take a very brief, a minute, to allow our technology professionals some time to connect the speaker we have for today.
This is Raymond.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, thank you. Now everyone is connected to the meeting, and before considering the bills and resolutions we have for us today.
I'm sorry, Council President. I still need to contact with Channel 64 to get started. I didn't know if you had any opening words.
I'm sorry.
Okay, please give me one moment.
Thank you. Well, now that everyone is connected to the meeting, and before considering the resolutions and bills we have before us today, we will consider public comment, and we'll go as follows. Public comment must concern matters on the second reading and final passage calendar for possible action at a session of council. A speaker on any of those matters must sign up in order to testify. You must call 215-686-3406 by 3 p.m. the day before the session to sign up for public comment. When you call, we will take your name, phone number, the number of the legislative item you are commenting on, and whether you are in support of or against the legislation, and add your name to the list. We will telephone each person on the list during the council session and invite them to our remote meeting. Under ideal circumstances, which we have today, we will have 3 minutes to speak. In order to be fair to all those wishing to speak, though, I intend to hold faithfully to the established time limit. So once invited to the meeting and asked to begin your testimony, a timer will be started. We will monitor your remaining time throughout your testimony, and when there are 30 seconds remaining to your time, you will be reminded of this. Once your allotted time has passed, you will be asked to conclude your remarks, and shortly thereafter, you will be muted and disconnected from the remote meeting. I also reserve the right to limit the number of speakers where repetitious comments are being made on the same subject matter, and to limit the scope of the testimony to only allow certain items on the agenda during the public health emergency, which could affect callbacks for public comment at any meeting. So please be aware that this public meeting is being recorded, and because the meeting is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. So by continuing to be in this meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. I will now ask Mr. Chief Clerk to please read the name of our first speaker.
Mr. President, the only speaker we have today is Dr. Raymond Cataneo, commenting on 210427.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Raymond Cataneo. Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of Resolution 210427. I'm Raymond Cataneo. My pronouns are he and him. I am the lead pediatric faculty of the Einstein Healthcare Network's PRIDE program, a comprehensive and inclusive program designed specifically for the sexual and gender diverse patients in our community. I'm here representing the 20 healthcare professionals of that program. HB 972, as all anti-trans bills barring trans individuals the right to participate in sports aligned with their gender identity, is based on myths, lies, and ignorance. Here are the facts. First, trans girls are girls. There is no outward sign, medical test, or genetic marker that can define a person's gender. Therefore, girls should be allowed to play sports as girls. Second, trans girls are not dominating women's sports. Proponents of this bill cannot cite one case of a trans girl dominating a sport because it doesn't happen. Third, a person's genitalia and hormonal makeup does not necessarily give them an advantage in competition. Trans girls do not have any specific or immutable advantage. Fourth, banning trans athletes perpetuates myths and misunderstandings about trans people. Banning trans athletes has the very real potential of encouraging gender policing and racial discrimination. In all likelihood, we will see worse physical and mental health in athletes, especially trans athletes. And if that happens, there will be a direct and clear link to the legislators who support this bill. Fifth, sports are about inclusivity, goal setting, teamwork, and overall well-being. People who participate in sports as youth and adolescents have been found to have higher grades, higher scores on state assessment tests, and higher rates of high school graduation. In places that have trans inclusive policies, participation in sports has increased for all genders. Allowing trans girls to play girls' sports helps everyone. 6, multiple medical, counseling, educational, and legal organizations have spoken out against these bills, citing the harm they cause. Lastly, your words and actions matter. As you may know, a co-sponsor of HB 972 represents a portion of Philadelphia. The passage of this resolution will send a firm message to her, the people of her district, and all citizens of Philadelphia that this bill does not represent the ideals of this historic city. By defending the most vulnerable among us, you are speaking volumes. Trans people encourage, welcome, and undoubtedly need the support of leaders like you. As the American Academy of Pediatrics has stated, in sports, politics has no place here. Transgender children, like all children, just want to belong. Einstein Healthcare Network's PRIDE program healthcare professionals are defending the right of our trans community to belong. We thank you for defending the right to belong. Please pass this resolution. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. And that concludes today's public comment period. We will now consider the bills and resolutions on the second reading and final passage calendar. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210426.
A resolution authorizing the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to execute and deliver to the Philadelphia Land Bank deeds conveying title to certain properties located in the 5th Councilmanic District.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf, I move the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. And that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210427.
A resolution urging the Pennsylvania State Legislature and Governor Tom Wolf to reject House Bill 972, intended to prohibit transgender athletes from participating in high school and/or collegiate sports according to their gender identity.
Chair recognizes.
Council President.
I'm sorry. Chair recognizes. Is that Councilman O'Neill?
I'm sorry. I'll wait till after the sponsor
moves the resolution. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Chair recognizes Councilman O'Neill.
Yes, Mr. President. I know sometimes it's confused on no votes on the virtual, and I'll be voting no on this resolution.
Thank you. Thank you. Let the record reflect. Councilman O'Neill will be voting no. This resolution has been moved and properly second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Record reflects that Councilman O'Neill is voting nay. This resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210-428.
A resolution recognizing and honoring West Philadelphia and Winfield native Shaka Tony on being drafted to the Washington football team in the 2021 NFL Draft.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Councilmember Jones, I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and probably second that the resolution be adopted. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, 210-429.
A resolution authorizing the Philadelphia Land Bank to dispose of 1329 South 15th Street located in the 2nd Councilmanic District.
Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson for a motion.
Thank you, Council President. I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that the resolution be adopted. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210-430.
A resolution honoring Equal Justice Initiative founder Brian Stevenson for his lifelong pursuit of justice, vindicating the rights of the accused, and fighting mass incarceration.
Chair again recognizes Councilman Johnson for a motion.
Thank you, Council President, and I thank my colleagues for support of this resolution. Brian Stevenson is a remarkable individual who played in the movie Just Mercy by Michael B. Jordan, and he has a museum that focuses on addressing the issue of mass incarceration, but also, most importantly, the historical aspects of lynching that have taken place all throughout South Street. So he is doing some great work in this area, and I want to acknowledge him because his family comes from the Grays Ferry community of South Philadelphia, which is in the 2nd Councilmanic District. And I also recommend an outstanding documentary that life and his work on HBO.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
Good, can't complain. Yeah.
Councilman Squilla, can you mute your phone, please?
I'm sorry, Councilman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Council President and colleagues, I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210-432.
A resolution authorizing the Philadelphia Land Bank to dispose of 19, 21, 23, 25, 27 East Somerset Street, 3022, 3024, 3026, and 3028 North American Street, 2907 Grandsback Street, 413 West Norris Street, 419 West Norris Street, and 2152 North Randolph Street, located in the 7th Councilmanic District.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Corona Sanchez for a motion.
Thank you, Council President. I move for its adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210-433.
Resolution honoring the nonprofit organization The Block Gives Back for their successful youth internship program for 12 to 18-year-olds aimed at growing nonprofit operation skills and providing support for community events.
Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas for a motion on the resolution.
Thank you, Council President. I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second that the resolution be adopted. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted. Mr. Decker, please read the title of resolution number 210-434.
A resolution calling on the City of Philadelphia to implement minimum force training for all law enforcement officers.
Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Council President. I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Council President,
Yeah.
I had requested a comment on this resolution.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, now it's popping up. My screen is not giving me the appropriate indication as to who raised their hand. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Thank you very much, Council President. I had some concerns about this resolution that I wanted to raise. First, I want to make clear that the resolution to implement minimum force training for all law enforcement officers, minimum force is already a policy of the Philadelphia Police Department. Directive 10.3 clearly indicates that there is minimum force already in play. I assume and will certainly check with the police commissioner that if there are existing policies and directives, that officers are obviously trained on such policies and directives. I always believe, of course, that training should be improved and all of that. But I do want to make clear that minimum force policy is already in existence, and I would be surprised if officers are not trained on their policies. I think that if there was discussion in this resolution about the types of alternatives that champions like Charles Ramsey have openly talked about, they have talked about further de-escalation strategies, not just minimum force training, but actually research-backed training and tools that help agencies build trust, diffuse situations, reduce the use of force. They've specifically talked about things like social interaction trainings and actually teaching officers how to deal with people. And in fact, some of the things that were noted were that, some of the technical training that is being proposed, for example, in this resolution, in some instances are acknowledged, but Ramsey and many others say that what officers need more than anything else are strong interpersonal skills, and very few get little formal instruction on that, and that is not mentioned in this resolution. But the main reason why I have serious concerns about this resolution is that there are two clauses in it that really take on the work of this council and this council's body to hold police officers, the police department, and our city to a higher standard. I will specify. Two of the clauses say, as a result of George Floyd's death, there is a national push to reform laws and protocols pertaining to police conduct and liability. And whereas some of these efforts are questionable and may result in unintended consequences that increase crime and injury, I have an issue with that language. I want to emphasize that members of this body, including yourself, Council President Clark, and Councilmember Jones, have pursued a police oversight commission, recognizing that this is critically important to the work of responsibility and of ensuring the broader public safety. That effort is supported by a majority of our city council body. Councilmember Johnson's ban on chokeholds, supported unanimously by our body, came out of that work. Councilmember Thomas's bill to review vehicular police stops and ensure that there is not racial profiling or a diversion of different aspects of profiling and race-based policing of our communities is an important aspect of the work that we are doing. And of course, our work to ban tear gas, less than lethal munitions, also overwhelmingly supported by our council body and in line with appropriate police practices, is the continued work. I am not comfortable supporting a resolution that so broadly disparages this work and leaves open-ended this idea that these efforts are questionable and may result in unintended consequences that increase crime and injury. I will be voting no on this bill, on this resolution as a result, unless there were some significant changes or expansions to it. But I really feel that this body takes police responsibility seriously. We support minimum force, which is already a policy of the police department. And what we need to be emphasizing right now is not just minimum force training, but an expansion of de-escalation, a supporting of the mobile crisis units, for example, a supporting of alternatives to policing, and a supporting of ensuring that our police officers get actually the training that has been called for and needed, and not just what is already on the books. Thank you, Council President.
Council President, I have a point of information.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
I want to thank Councilmember Gim for raising the comments that she raised. My question is to the sponsor in reference to the nature of those two whereas clauses. I believe reading is fundamental. And when I first read the resolution, it sounded on its face something that many people would be supportive of until I did read those two clauses, which also caused me pause. So with that, I'd like the sponsor to provide some additional context in reference to those two whereas clauses as part of this resolution regarding minimum force training.
Councilman O.
Thank you very much. I appreciate both questions and both issue raised by Councilmember Helen Gim and Councilmember Derek Green. So let me say that there are policies and then there are practices. So a policy, for example, may be to perform well, or to not do certain things, or to do certain things on the football field. You could call that a policy. But it's not a practice unless you practice it. And there are things that you can do well without stress or pressure. And then there are things that you do automatically when you are under life-threatening stress and pressure. What happens is people have to be trained to do or not do certain things. It comes with a lot of training. Officers go through the police academy, and for the most part, not completely, but for the most part, except for the yearly examination and qualification that they go through, which is not extensive, they don't receive additional training. And I think the issue about George Floyd, which is a very serious one, which cities like ours and police departments actually, even across the world, are responding to. Legislators are responding to. And I think the issue is there's many ways to respond to it, but one of the things that we can do, one of them, is to focus on what happens when police officers are responding to life-threatening confrontations, and the training that they have is on using lethal force. And they do not have continuous training in how to not use force, when not to use force, and how to use minimal force and when to use minimal force. Lethal force is always at their disposal, in that they have a firearm, for example, that they could rely on, and that's what they've been trained. So while there may be some written rules and guidance and policies on minimum force, it has to be a practice. The example of someone believing they pulled out a taser and it's actually a firearm is an example that when people are under stress, they do things believing they're doing one thing. It takes practice. It takes practice under pressure in order to to be able to not make those errors. It also will guide the department on perhaps where the taser is located, what type of taser should be used, how it may not be confused with a firearm. And I would like to say that there are differences, and so let me explain some of the differences. Police generally are trained, when they are trained to, it's actually not an extensive amount, in defensive tactics. Defensive tactics are, for example, how to combat someone using a baton, or when you don't have your firearm, it's not working, or those type of things. Minimum force is not simply using the least amount of force by applying, for example, jujitsu or judo holds or wrestling holds or things like that. It is a mentality to kind of assess the situation and make a very quick and proper decision on whether any force should be used, whether it is better to let the suspect flee the situation, or whether when dealing with the elderly person or a teenager, certain types of restraints are proper or improper. Without proper training, a person may try to apply a restraint, and it's not a chokehold, that may result in a broken shoulder, a broken arm, a broken elbow. Chokeholds are not the only type of holds. There are other holds that can result in some pretty serious damage as well. I think it is important that those who are charged with the responsibility of restraining someone who may be harming another person or even trying to kill that person understand the most efficient and effective ways. Regarding, what are some of the questionable things? For example, in New York, the city put out a rule that when arresting a suspect, police officers cannot put any weight on the suspect when they're in a prone position. That's going to be very difficult. Putting weight on a suspect when you're trying to subdue them enough to put handcuffs on them or to control them. If you're not going to put weight, there are ways not to put weight on people. There are ways to put weight on people. Just a blanket rule, don't put weight. You're going to need a lot of officers on that one person trying not to put weight on them. Putting weight on them is a way to restrain them without harming them, without letting them get hurt, without letting them hurt themselves. And so I think that is going to have an unintended consequence. Either you're going to have like 5 officers on someone, or if they're trying to subdue that person and they don't put weight on them, that person might get more injured, or the police officers might get more injured. And so I think education is the best way to deal with those topics. Chokeholds, for example, there are a lot of different types of chokeholds, many chokeholds. There's all sorts of ways to apply chokeholds. The bill that we have is that once a person is controlled, chokeholds are not to be applied. However, when an officer is trying to protect their weapon from a person who is trying to grab their weapon or to kill them or to harm them or to harm others, there is no rule that we have that chokeholds are not applicable. You can apply chokeholds when you are fighting for your life or trying to prevent damage from occurring. However, it is when the person is subdued. Now, what kind of chokeholds? There are a variety of chokeholds, and they have different effects. There are what we call blood chokes, and there are air chokes, which can crush your esophagus. There are chokes that will put you to sleep. There are chokes you could apply with one arm in, one arm out. There are chokes that could result in a broken neck. There are all sorts of ways to choke people. You could do it with a collar. You could do it with clothes. You could do it with your elbow. You could do it in many, many ways. It is a good idea to train officers to understand, the unintended consequences of restraining people, and I think that is a good idea. I will say, in my opinion, and this is something that can be discussed, qualified immunity has come up. And when qualified immunity is removed, there's a good chance that officers will not want to carry out their duties. That is an unintended consequence that can come up for discussion. So those are things that I am talking about. I will say that Delaware County, Bucks County have already began the exploration of mandatory minimum force training, which again, it is not simply telling a person not to use greater force than necessary. It is teaching and training them how to assess the situation and how to present, in their minds, the idea of what is the violation, what type of conduct is appropriate. For example, we all saw the video of the Army lieutenant who pulled into a well-lit gas station over what is otherwise a traffic stop, and having two police officers pull out their firearms and point it at him. It would appear to me completely unnecessary. I do understand for people who are concerned that, yes, traffic stops are very dangerous, and you also have, unfortunately, law enforcement that have been murdered as a result of a traffic stop. I'm not saying to be uncautious. I am saying that a traffic stop where a person pulls into a well-lit gas station, has a Army uniform on, yes, it may be fake, but, the point is the conversation, the approach, all those things are part of minimum force training. To not simply pull out firearms, point them at a person, and begin that type of dialogue with demands and commands. So that is minimum force training. And I think it is something that is important to be pursued in our police department. Thank you.
Council President.
I'm sorry, Councilman Green. Councilman Green.
Yeah, Councilmember O provided a lot of language in his response to my point of information, and I'll be a little bit more specific. And just going specifically to the language of your resolution, both you and I are lawyers, so words are very meaningful. And you state specifically a national push to reform laws and protocols pertaining to police conduct and liability, whereas some of these efforts are questionable. You made a statement regarding chokeholds, and I guess you're saying that their efforts on a national level to reform chokeholds are questionable and may result in unintended consequences that may increase crime and injury. And you gave a lot of perspective on different types of chokeholds. However, the very definition of a chokehold is a tight grip around a person's neck used to restrain them by restricting their breathing. So I want to make sure I understand that you're saying that the reform of a chokehold is a questionable effort that may result in unintended consequences that may increase crime or injury.
No, that's not what I meant, if that's what you heard. What I said is, and what I meant is, for example, in New York, not making it illegal and improper for a police officer to put body weight on a suspect that they are trying to restrain is questionable and will likely lead to unintended consequences. When it comes to the proper and important idea of restraining or preventing chokeholds, there are many types of chokeholds, many ways to do it. And so none of the legislation that I'm aware of, there may be that just blanketly, even if someone is coming at you and trying to grab your weapon, you can't apply a chokehold. I've never seen that. All the legislation is about after you restrain someone or you have someone in control, you cannot apply a chokehold. But if someone is trying to stab you or shoot you or grab your weapon, Yeah, when you are, a police officer dealing with, a bigger, stronger person and trying to grab your gun, there's been no law that I'm aware of that prevents an officer from doing everything they can to prevent themselves from being killed, including chokeholds.
Mr.
However,
President,
the
Mr.
point that
President,
I have
No,
is that
hold
when
on. All right, this is going on.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman, hold on a second.
I call for the orders of the day.
All right. Well, I had, Councilwoman, there were a couple of members that had teed up for point of a clarification. So I don't want to diminish their interest in this. And I know if you call for the vote, and I understand we're supposed to call for the vote. So if those members that have expressed an interest in teeing up point of clarification.
I will close my point of information.
Mr. President,
I would like a point of clarification, Council President. Mine will be.
Councilwoman Sanchez.
Yeah, I need to be brief, but I think it's important to put something on the record because there's extensive work in this area, as Councilmember Ginn mentioned. And I really believe I wanted to ask the resolution sponsor, this should be a call for a hearing and a public discussion for all the reasons the debate is happening as we're looking at 21st century policing. My request yesterday to the police commissioner was specifically around an update to the Justice Department report that really laid out the changing of policy around use of deadly force and all of these restraint measures. And this is one of the reasons I requested that update from her, because I think it's a valuable conversation to have. I just don't think that making a statement versus calling for a public hearing is what we should be doing given the nuances and the interpretation. So that's my point of clarification. There's a lot of stuff on the books. The police commissioner is going to submit that to us before the end of this budget cycle as an update to policy and practice. And that's my point for the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Council President, I also had a point of clarification.
Yeah, let me kind of do it one at a time, if you don't mind, Council President, because I can't answer like 5 different points after one made them.
Little order, please. All right. Councilwoman Fiona Sanchez has been teed up. Councilman Gim has been teed up. Councilman No, and I'm a very patient person. Like some people say, it's like
Mr. President,
I think I'm patient too. Listen, let me, if you don't mind, Council President, if I could just answer Councilwoman Sanchez rather than trying to remember her question and go through like a bunch of council members. I don't know if I'll remember at the end of that. So in answer to Councilmember Sanchez's point, I think a hearing is a wonderful idea. However, as you stated, minimum force training is not up to City Council. That is something that is within the purview of the administration and the police commissioner. However, what is in our purview is funding. What is in our purview is certain aspects of that, because minimum force training does not just happen out of thin air. There has to be made by the police commissioner and the administration what they're going to do. They have to create a program. City Council will not be involved in creating a program. We can have a hearing on it. They have to create a program. Then they have to decide how they're going to implement that program. For example, if officers who are, for example, patrol officers or officers who are engaged in making arrests are going to receive, mandatory minimum force training, how do they do it? Where do they do it? Do they do it at the police academy? Do they do it at a local approved provider, such as a certified martial arts school? What program are they getting? If they are receiving that training, who is paying for it? What if they get hurt while they are getting this training? Is that covered by workers' compensation? Are they expected to do this on their own time? What is the incentive? If they're doing it on job time, does that take them off of their shift? Those issues have to be first worked out by the administration, and they have to decide if they're going to do that, and then they would present to us, City Council, a budget request if that is something that they're going to try to pursue. So that is why I did it in terms of a resolution, because that is going to be, something that is completely within the purview of the administration. Thank you.
Mr. President, I just want to know for the record that I'm having technical difficulties and my hand up function is not working. But I did, Mr. President, in lieu of all of the conversation and dialogue surrounding resolution number 210434, if in order at this time, Mr. President, wanted to make a motion that 210434 be tabled.
And Council President, could I just have a point of clarification?
Council, excuse me, Council.
Very strong.
Hold on, guys. It's moved in second. Councilwoman Kim, you had asked for some clarification.
I have had a chance to communicate with Commissioner Outlaw, and I feel very strongly about this for the council sponsor. It is inaccurate to say that the police officers of the PPD are only trained in lethal force. She made very clear to me that there is a minimum force directive already in play and that officers are trained accordingly. The mythology that somehow our problems with policing are based on the fact that officers are only trained in lethal force, do not have minimum force training, and obfuscate the fact that the bigger issue is in play, which is how are we de-escalating within our communities. That is the problem fundamentally with the resolution, that it is inaccurate by saying that police officers are not trained in minimum force training, and that somehow this is a magic bullet, while maybe intentionally, I'm not clear, disparaging significant efforts that this council body has undertaken to take a look at other forms of interaction that are critically important if we are going to both raise up public confidence and trust in policing and to improve public safety in the city of Philadelphia. The commissioner herself has clarified that the PPD is not solely trained in lethal force. So comments to that effect are inaccurate, and they are not, I feel like they are irresponsible in the sense that they deflect away from why this council body has been so engaged and is so important in discussing alternatives and expansion. And in the wake of George Floyd, we are not doing things that create unintentional consequences. We are being very purposeful and research-based and evidence-based about what this city needs to pursue in the wake of what has happened, not just to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, but to people here in our own city. Thank you very much, Council President. I will be voting now.
Well, if I could respond to that, Council President.
Mr. President,
Hold on. All right, Councilman, I'm going to ask you, do you want to hold the resolution, because there was a call to the question. So either you can hold it or I have to respond to the call to the question.
I don't have a problem holding the bill. However, I think there's some misinformation that I will have to respond to.
Well, I mean, it's a call to the question, Councilman. I'm giving you an opportunity to hold it, and then you can have further conversation with the colleagues.
Well, let's run the bill. People can vote against it. They want to vote against minimum force training resolution to the city. That's fine with me.
Okay. It was a call to the question by Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Mr. President.
Mr. Decker.
There was a seconded motion on the floor to table by Councilwoman Parker. That motion is considered without debate.
Okay,
Does
well,
Councilwoman Parker withdraw that motion?
Call to the question was first, I believe.
Correct.
And we kind of.
Well, there was a call for the question.
The call for order or the call for the previous question? The call for previous question will require 4 seconds.
All right, there's a motion to table on the floor. Our parliamentarian has spoken. Call the table. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
No. Councilman
Ayes have
O'Neill.
it. Ayes have it, and the resolution is tabled. Thank you all very much. Democracy in action. I love it. Mr. Decker, please read the title 210-203.
Well, Council President, I feel I should respond and have the opportunity to respond to inaccurate statements made by Councilmember Gibb.
Councilman O, can you
President.
can you do that at the time of the speeches on behalf of the minority and majority? You will have adequate time.
I can. I will wait till then.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Decker, 210-203.
An ordinance authorizing and approving the execution and delivery of one or more service agreements between the City of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority and or one or more other city-related authorities relating to the financing of a neighborhood preservation initiative, which includes housing, commercial corridors, and neighborhood infrastructure programs, approving the issuance by each such authority of bonds, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness, including reimbursement obligations related to lines or letters of credit in one or more series to finance or refinance such initiative, and authorizing and approving the obligation of the City of Philadelphia to pay in full when due the service fee and other amounts payable under each service agreement.
Thank you. This bill has been read on 2 different days. The question is now, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass.
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks.
Aye.
Councilman Dom.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim.
Aye.
Councilman Heenan. Councilman Johnson.
Aye.
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O.
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilman Squilla.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17, the nays are 0. Majority of all members having voted in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, please read the title of bill number 210-286.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Haldeman Avenue, both sides from Clark Street to Red Lion Road.
This bill has been read on 2 different days. The question now is, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass.
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim.
Aye.
Councilman Heenan.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson.
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O.
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilman Squilla.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17, the nays are 0. Majority of all members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, please read the title of 210-287.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Tomlinson Road, both sides from Bustleton Avenue to Lindsay Street.
This bill has been read on 2 different days. The question now, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass.
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks.
Aye.
Councilman Dom.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17 and nays are 0. Majority of all members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, please read the title of 210-288.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Brookmont Road, both sides from Ferndale Street to Medway Road.
This bill having been read on 2 different days. The question now is, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass,
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks,
Aye.
Councilman Dom,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17 and nays are 0. Majority of all members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, please read the title of bill number 210-289.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Bridle Road, both sides from Brookmont Road to Bartlett Street.
This bill having been read on 2 different days. The question now, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass,
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks,
Aye.
Councilman Dom,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17 and nays are 0. Majority of all members present voted in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, 210-290.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Chesworth Road, both sides from Varee Road to Ferndale Street.
This bill having been read on 2 different days. Question is, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass,
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks,
Aye.
Councilman Dom,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye. Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17 and nays are 0. Majority of members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, please read the title of 210-291.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and tow-away zone regulations on Ferndale Street, both sides from Jean Street to Red Line Road.
This bill having been read on 2 different days, the question now, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass,
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks,
Aye.
Councilman Dom,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Jones is voting aye, Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 17 and nays are 0. Majority of members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes. Mr. Decker, 210-292.
An ordinance establishing no truck parking and towaway zone regulations on Graymont Street, both sides from Jean Street to Ferndale Street.
This bill having been read on 2 different days, the question now, shall the bill pass finally? Mr. Decker, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bass,
Aye.
Councilwoman Brooks,
Aye.
Councilman Dom,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gautier,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gim,
Aye.
Councilman Heenan,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson, Councilman Jones is voting aye, Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilman O'Neill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Parker,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilman Squilla,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas,
Aye.
Council President Clark.
Aye, the ayes are 16, nays are 0. Majority of all members present voting in the affirmative, the bill passes.
Excuse me, Council President.
You got it?
Did you get, yeah, excuse me, did you get me recorded on that one?
Yeah, Councilman Jones, you just want to be recorded as voting aye on
Yeah, this is Johnson.
210-292. Okay. Let the record reflect that Councilman Johnson is voting aye on bill number 210-292. That vote is 17.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mr. Decker, do you have any additional resolutions?
Yes, Mr. President. A resolution authorizing the Committee on Education to hold hearings on the benefits of the Pennsylvania System School Assessment, PSSA testing, and the administration of these tests by the Philadelphia School District, introduced by Councilman Squilla.
Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted.
And a resolution authorizing the Committee on Public Health and Human Services to hold hearings regarding mobile crisis units, introduced by Councilwoman Bass.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted.
There are no other resolutions on the final passage calendar, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Decker. That concludes our calendar for today. Prior to recognizing members regarding speeches, I will note for the record at that time, we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this particular purpose. With that said, there are speeches on behalf of the minority. Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Council President. I am going to respond just simply about what I believe is just misinformation. And information can always be learned, so it's not a huge problem. I spoke with the commissioner in length about this topic, as I did Commissioner Ross and Commissioner Ramsey. I am well versed in this topic. I spoken to other officers in the police department, and I've spoken to different supervisors. I, from time to time, find police officers in my jiu-jitsu academy, and I train with them. They're paying for that out of their pocket. This is a national issue. It has been around for a long time. Other countries train their officers better than we do, primarily because in other countries there are no firearms. Criminals can get firearms, but oftentimes they have machetes or they have knives, and officers find themselves dealing with those situations. There's a difference between writing a rule and training someone to do it. If we could just write rules and create a championship basketball team, that would be great. But we can't. No matter how much written instruction or verbal instruction you give to someone, no matter how talented they are, they need a basketball, they need a court, they need to train, they need to practice, and they have to overcome their natural reactions through training and discipline. It is not mythology, and I think that's where we have a problem. For those who want to defund the police beyond what people want, and we're talking about the haves and the have-nots, those who have public safety, those who have private security, those who live in vertical gated communities or gated communities, and those who don't. Not everybody in our city wants or needs a police, but there are a lot of people, far more people in our city that live with crime constantly. Gun violence is not happening in every neighborhood of our city. And in those communities, they want policing. They just can't get it. They want it, and they want it improved. They want reforms. But then we're running up against people who say there are no reforms that could happen that will improve the police. And that's where we get into this problem. Trying to improve the police to regain a level of confidence, because people who want the police and require the police yet have concerns about policing. And to the extent that we're simply dealing with a portion of that, which is better training, to assure the people of this city that they will have police, that we are concerned about the issues that are rising, and that we will train them better, that we will allocate the funds and the tools and the resources so that people know that our police officers are receiving the best training, equipment, and capabilities for their needs. It is not mythology. People who are not trained properly or trained adequately or trained extensively do not perform well. There is a level of training that people can receive. For example, our officers go through a police academy, but outside of that, they are going to work, and they work a stressful job. They work long hours, and then they have their time off for their families or other things. They are not necessarily using that time to do more training. Some do, but most don't. They have a busy life. What we're proposing is to take that directive and make it real by providing the resources so that the officers can receive the training that is in the directive. Without the training, without the resources, without the tools, that leaves the idea that the police will never get better. We will reduce the police. They will not be available. We will limit their interaction. We will replace them with something else. And what we are doing now that I'm saying is unintended consequences is without better training and tools. You're simply creating restrictions, prohibitions, punishments, being fired, being sued, and saying that's going to create a better police department. It's not. It's just going to create a police department of people who cannot and will not do their jobs, so that when that 911 call is made because your life is being threatened, people may not respond or may not respond in the way that you want. Yes, if you can call a social worker, that's fantastic. If you can get a counselor, a psychologist to come out, that's great. But the call is man with gun. It's not man with gun who needs to be talked to by a psychologist and a counselor. That's not the call. So I don't know of any social workers who are rushing out to the call man with gun, man with knife. That is a police officer. And that police officer can assess the situation and then call a counselor, a social worker. That is what we're trying to make part of training and make sure that the officers are certified and that the city is doing its part. Bad police officers is the fault of this administration and this council. You not just blame the police officers or the police department. They work for the city. They are city employees. They are our employees. Our duty is to provide them the equipment and training they need. I think it's a great idea. Someone raised here, one of our council members, and several wanted to go look at a police academy and do citizens training. I think that's a great idea. I think people who don't know anything about policing, who don't live in high crime neighborhoods, who have never been surrounded by people trying to hurt them or take their life, who do not need to call the police department and require immediate action, as many of our citizens do, can make up rules that are just words on a piece of paper. So I will rework the resolution, but the resolution is really a request to the city to create a practice and a policy, and then they will have to submit budget in order to make that policy and practice a reality. That is where we come in. We can approve or disapprove the money that they ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Speeches on behalf of the majority. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Council President. When I put in my speech for the majority, it was in reference to an event this weekend regarding Smith Playground, which is having their second annual slide-a-thon this Saturday. And they're having an all-star slide team, which is going to include State Representative Donna Bullock, former Eagle Connor Baldwin, as well as KYW News Radio anchor Denise Nakano. And that will be this Saturday at Smith Playground. And I'm always fortunate to support Smith Playground because they've done such great work and is an institution in our city that very many of us are familiar with their internationally renowned wooden slide. And they've been fortunate enough to host our annual Autism Play Day at Smith Playground. So for those of you who are able to participate this Saturday, come out to Smith Playground. It's been fully renovated and they've done some great things there. They've really done phenomenal work in the park, and it's been an institution for numerous years in our city, and I hope you can support Smith Playground. But I have to follow up some commentary that was made this morning in our council session. Unlike others of this body, I'm not going to try to speak for all citizens in the city of Philadelphia. But I think the phrase mythology was raised in reference to some of the issues that were discussed and has been discussed here in this city and across this country regarding the challenges with police. And I think the mythology is that you can just increase training, and we do need to increase training. I've been a very strong proponent of additional attempts and needs for training for those that have physical learning differences like autism, and we need to increase training. But the simple perspective that if we just increase training, that's going to change some of the challenges that we've had in the interaction with police, I, from my perspective, don't believe to be true. I think that's the mythology, which is the mistake, just by increasing training. And I can only speak from my experiences as an African-American man and the interaction I've had with the police department, in particular as a former assistant district attorney, and when I was an assistant district attorney being racially profiled. I don't think additional training would have changed that dynamic that I was racially profiled when I was actually coming from the district attorney's office, probably subpoenaing some of the very officers that decided to racially profile me as I was going to my car, leaving the DA's office. So I think this is an ongoing conversation, a robust conversation that this body has engaged in and will continue to engage in as we move forward to not only address the gun violence issue in our city, but also make sure that people are not being racially profiled as we try to address these issues. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. This will be a significant part of our conversation, not only during our budget hearing, but as we interact with people throughout the city of Philadelphia. This is number one on our list, along with poverty, along with opportunities, along with resources, along with a whole lot of different things. So thank you so much.
And one last point I failed to mention for Smith Playground, that if people could come at 1:45 on Saturday at Smith Playground for the activities and festivities. Thank you, Councilman.
Smith Playground. Remember that giant sliding board looked so big as a child. But that's interesting. 1:45, Councilman? 1:45?
That is correct. 1:45.
Right.
Thank you.
I might come see that. Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning, everyone. Today, May 13th, is the 36th anniversary of the MOVE bombing. On this date in 1985, the city of Philadelphia carried out a brutal attack on its own citizens. As part of an effort to forcefully evict MOVE, a Black liberation group, from their home at 6221 Osage Avenue, police fired over 10,000 rounds of ammunition in under 90 minutes at a row house containing children. When that didn't achieve the desired effect, city officials then made the unconscionable decision to drop a bomb on the home. This is among the only times in our nation's history that a police force has bombed its own people. That explosion caused a fire, which authorities allowed to burn. They didn't call in firefighters until nearly an hour later. And by that time, it was already out of control. 11 members of the Africa family, 5 children, and 6 adults lost their lives in that house. And as a result of the fire, 2 surrounding city blocks were burned to the ground, destroying 61 homes and leaving 250 Philadelphians homeless. To this day, not a single person has faced criminal consequences or been held accountable in any meaningful way for these brutal acts. To this day, justice has not been served. Last year, this body passed a resolution formally apologizing for the events of that day in 1985 and establishing May 13th as an annual day of remembrance in Philadelphia to honor those we lost. I want to thank all my colleagues for supporting this important effort. It is vital that we reflect on these painful and harmful moments in our history. We need to fully reckon with what happened that day. We need to understand it and remember it so that we don't ever repeat it. And furthermore, we need to recognize the pain and trauma that these events have wrought upon the Cobbs Creek community and Black people in our city as a whole. We are very much still dealing with the consequences of this tragedy in our communities today. Just last month, it came to light that the remains of at least 2 of the Africa children were mishandled and given to the Penn Museum without the family's consent. These are the remains of children who died at the hands of the state, and even in death, they didn't receive even a shred of respect or dignity. It's disgusting and barbaric. The fact that our city not only killed 5 Black children, but then gave their bones away without any consideration for what their families' wishes were, demonstrates a lack of care and concern for Black lives. Philadelphians deserve a full accounting of what happened, and everyone involved needs to be held accountable for their actions. And finally, before I close, I would like to read the names of the 11 Philadelphians we lost that day and ask that we pause for a moment of silence in their memory. Netta Africa, age 12. Tree Africa, age 14. Phil Africa, age 11. Delisha Africa, age 12. Tommaso Africa, age 9, John Africa, Conrad Africa, Raymond Africa, Frank Africa, Rhonda Africa, and Teresa Africa. May we please have a minute of silence? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Day that will be with us forever. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilwoman Gaultier, lest we ever forget. Mr. President, I wanted to note for the record that when we as a city made the announcement earlier this week that we would have a full June reopening, it was music to the ears of many small business owners in neighborhoods across the city of Philadelphia. And I know I got a lot of positive feedback from residents of the 9th Councilmatic District. As we continue to proceed in our efforts to get through our budget hearings and we begin to formally negotiate on what our final budget would look like, I want to say to those who are a part of that industry that I've been talking about, and I made mention of this during our budget hearings when our finance director and our budget director were in front of us, that the one thing economists on each side of the spectrum appear to be agreeing on is that they are predicting a K-shaped recovery. And for the benefit of the viewing public, Mr. President, that is noting that those at the top who are richer are expected to get richer, and that those with less means will either become more poor or that they will just flatline. And at the top, Mr. President, those industries that are expected to recover quickly are those in the field of technology, retail, and software services. But those industries are needing the most assistance, where the most Black and brown people work, are travel, entertainment, hospitality, and food services. And Mr. President, this data is from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It's with that in mind, Mr. President, that I want to say to Visit Philadelphia, to Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association, and our Philly-based members of the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, that we hear you, that we know there is a need for us to do as much as we can to front load federal stimulus dollars in this budget to fund a robust marketing and tourism comeback in our region, so that we can address the issues that we need to hear, like gun violence, and ensuring that there are economic opportunities for all Philadelphians and that they can be put on a path to self-sufficiency. So I just wanted to note for the record, Mr. President, that your calls are not falling on deaf ears. We hear you, and you will hear more from us about this issue in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. It does not appear that there are additional speeches on behalf of the majority. So with that, I would like to recognize Councilwoman Parker for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that council stand adjourned until Thursday, May 20th, 2021 at 10 a.m.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council stand adjourned until Thursday, May 20th, 2020, 10 a.m. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. And again, be safe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.